Hello, everyone. And so for this section, we're not actually working with any particular formulas, but we're just going to be doing several problems where we're looking at spending or costs. And each problem will have different ways to do them. But let's just start with our first example. We're going to do several in this particular section just to kind of help prepare you. But here's example one. Suppose you spend $25 every week on coffee and $124 per month on food. Over the course of a year, do you spend more money on coffee or food? And what we want to do here is assume, of course, that there are 52 weeks in a year, and we know that there are also 12 months in a year, and so we are going to use that as we do our calculations. All right, so let's start off with the first one. What we're doing is just we are comparing overall costs. First, we're looking at coffee. All right, in this problem, it says that you are spending we're doing coffee first. $25 every week on coffee. We want to see what you're spending over a course of a year. There are 52 weeks in a year, so we're going to multiply those two amounts. And that gives us 1,300. So that's what's getting spent on coffee. Now let's look at the food. This says $124 on food per month. So that's going to be times 12. Enter that in, and we get 1,488. So if we're looking at this, the answer, of course, would be that we're spending more on food over coffee. And that's it for that one. Kind of basic, right? I hope. Okay, let's look at example two. A friend pays $1.40 per day for an online subscription to a news service and spends $30 per week on gasoline for her car. Assume there are 365 days and 52 weeks in this year. Over the course of a year, does she spend more on her news service or gasoline? Okay, so we'll start again. So we're looking at news. She spends $1.40 per day. And so we know we have 365 days in the year. Of course, this is why we're saying assume 365, because I was just thinking you could have a leap year. All right, we get $511. Now, let's look at the other one. That's gas. And gas, it says it's $30 a week. So that'll be times 52. And we get $1,560. So here we can see that clearly she spends much more on gas over the news subscription. All right, let's look at example three. So here with example three, I just wanted to get this other part down. There we go. John bought a new TV for $2,500. He made a down payment of $800 and then financed the balance through the store. Unfortunately, he was unable to make the first monthly payment and now pays 8% interest per month on the balance, while he still watches his TV. What is John's monthly interest payment? So when we're talking about interest, now let's start off first with how much he owed. Because the TV was $2,500. That better be a nice TV. And then he put $800 down. So we got to subtract that to figure out what was the balance that he owed. And we get $1,700. Now we can look at what the interest is he's paying. So interest is 8%. And a little side note, and you're going to see this pop up a few times when we talk about interest. The interest here, I'm going to write it over here to the left, is 8%. When we are putting it into an equation, when we're doing some algebra with that, we need to turn it into a decimal. So just a quick little review. When you are turning percents into a decimal, just take the number and divide it by 100. It's always divided by 100. that would give you 0.08. So that is the number we're going to use when we're calculating the interest. Just don't forget to always turn your percent into a decimal. All right, he owes $1,700 and he's paying 8%. Well, he has 8% interest per month. So we're going to multiply the balance times the 8% or 0.08. What that gives us here is $136. So he's paying $136 a month just in interest when he didn't pay for that month. All right, so that was one example. Now let's look at more. Example 4. If a student stays in his hometown, he can go to an in-state college at a reduced tuition of $8,500 per year and pay $800 per month in rent. Or he can leave home, go to an out-of-state college with a $10,000 scholarship per year, pay $22,000 per year in tuition, and pay $300 per month to live in a dormitory. He will pay $1,200 per year to travel back and forth from the out-of-state college. Assuming all other factors are equal, which is the less expensive choice on an annual 12-month basis? All right, well, there's a lot to unpack here. We have a lot to look at. So let's just break this down. First, we're told he could go to a state college. And let's break down those expenses that it would be for him. So it says that it's going to be $8,500 in tuition. So we're looking at just 1 year expense, $8,500 a year. But he's also going to pay, see up here, he's going to pay $800 per month in rent. That would be 800 times 12. So this expense is going to be $18,100. Now let's look at an out-of-state college. This is the other option. Tuition for that is $22,000. But he has a $10,000 scholarship, which means I'm going to subtract the $10,000 because the scholarship will go towards that tuition. And then he's going to pay $300 a month for the dorms. So let's add that. So that's 300 times 12. But then there was one more pay. Here it is. He will, right here, if you can see my mouse, he will pay $1,200 per year to travel back and forth from the college. All right, so this is, you're going to do some math here. So we're going to subtract, then we're going to add those two amounts. And that gives us $16,800. So the cheaper or the less expensive option because of the scholarship is actually going to be the out-of-state college. So that would be our answer, would be the out-of-state. All right, example 5. You could have a part-time job, so 18 hours per week, that pays $20 per hour, or you could have a full-time job that pays $17 per hour. Because of the extra free time, you will spend $80 per week more on entertainment with the part-time job than with the full-time job. After accounting for the extra entertainment expense, how much more is your weekly cash flow with the full-time job than with the part-time job? So we're not going to talk about taxes or other expenses. We're just going to look at the overall breakdown here. So I guess the gross pay. Let's start off with the part-time. The part-time pays $20 per hour, and you would be doing that for 18 hours. That gives us $360. Now, it also says, so in addition to that, it says that you're going to make $360, but notice up here, you're going to spend $80 more than with the full-time job on entertainment. So now we're actually going to subtract the 80. And so what that gives us there is $280 because you're spending more now than you were if you had the full-time job, I guess because of the extra time. Now, that takes us to the full-time job. That pays $17 an hour, but it's for 40 hours a week. So if we multiply that, we get $680. Okay, but we're talking about the cash flow difference, meaning between what are you getting gross, right? So with the full-time job, let me put this here. So cash flow difference, with the full-time, you got your 680. With the part-time, because you're spending more on entertainment than with the full-time, then here, 680 minus 280, that's just going to give us $400, meaning you're going to get $400 more with the full-time job. All right, so that would be the difference. If you were just looking at the pay, it would be just over what 320. I'm just looking at that. It'd be 320 more. But because you're spending more on entertainment, that's why we ended up with the $400 more. All right, another example. This is all just comparing numbers, looking at budgeting. Giselle is considering installing solar panels on the roof of her house. Her monthly electricity bills currently average $95. The cost of installing this system is $16,000. However, she expects a 25% reduction in this cost due to tax credits and local rebates. Assuming all of her electrical needs are met by the new system and neglecting possible revenue when the system puts electricity back into the grid, what is the approximate payback period for this system? All right, what this means is that after she puts this system in, because she's going to spend, well, let's see how much she's going to spend first. So before we do anything, it's $16,000, but she expects a 25% reduction. Two ways I could do this. Actually, we'll just do it this first way. So 25% would be 0.25, right? You take 25 divided by 100. Okay, so that's the first thing we're going to do. Because she's reducing this. So we're going to take the 16,000 times 0.25, which gives us $4,000. But that's how much she's saving. So now we're going to take the 16,000 and reduce that by the 4,000. And what she expects to really be paying is 12,000. The reason why I was saying there's two ways to do it, I'm just going to kind of show you a side thing. If you think about percents are always out of 100. So if you have a 25% reduction, then she would be paying 75%, right? What's left over out of the 100%. If you caught that, you would take 16,000 times 0.75. And then that would give you the 12,000. Either way, you get to the correct answer, but there's really two possible ways you could have done that one. All right, now we're going to keep going because we didn't answer the question yet. The question wants to know, how long will it take for her to basically have paid back what she put in? So let's think about that. She spent $12,000, but now she was paying $95 a month in electricity. She's now saving that $95 because putting this in, she's not paying that anymore. So now she's saving the 95. So we want to divide that, the amounts, and then we'll just round to the nearest whole month. So if you look at that, because we're talking about how long it will take, it would take 126 months for her to have basically paid back what she put into the system. After the 126 months, then she will be saving money because now she's not paying that. But that's about, 10.5 years. So not very soon. But nonetheless, over time, that would be a good savings. One more question. Example 7. Now I did put try on here. If you want to pause the video and try this problem first on your own, totally fine. But I'm just going to keep going. But like I said, you can always pause me. Consider the following 3 lease options for a new car. Determine which lease is least expensive, assuming that you buy the car when the lease expires. What you're going to see in this problem is what's called a residual value. So that's going to be the car's price at that time. So then you buy the car, that's the price that you are paying now after you leased it. So plan A, what we're going to do is look at the cost of each plan. So if you were sitting down, you went to a dealership and they gave you these options and said, okay, here are your options. Pick which option works better for you. And by the way, it's not always the cheaper option. You also have to look at where your financial situation is. But let's start with plan A. Plan A, I'm going to just kind of work through this. So look at here. You're going to be paying $450 per month for 2 years. $450 a month for 2 years. That's 12 times a year for 2 years. Okay. We get $10,800. But now we're not done. That's just how much you're paying. So I wanted to get that one number in there first. So you're paying $10,800 a lease. But then you also have the residual value. That's the $10,500, what you're paying to buy the car at the end of the lease. And then don't forget, you put a down payment. So plan A says you put down $1,300 for this particular option. Add these numbers up, and you have $22,600 that you're paying altogether. Okay, now let's look at plan B. Plan B says you're going to pay $300 a month. So that's 12 months a year, but for 3 years. So what you're paying for that lease is $10,800. Just what you paid with plan A. So far, you're paying the same as far as the lease goes. So $10,800 plus the residual value, which is $10,000 now. And then what you put down. Now this says that right here, you put $650 down. Add all of that up, and this option means altogether you would have spent $21,450. Now plan C. You are spending $215 per month, but it's for 4 years. So this one's the longest of the leases, but smaller amounts. That comes to $10,320. Okay, so we're going to take that $10,320 plus the residual value, which is $8,500. And then, oh, look at that. You put 0 down. So plus 0. That comes out to be $18,820. So those are your 3 different options here. Which option works best for you is, like I said, it's going to depend on your financial situation. Everyone, of course, probably wants the cheaper of the 3 options, but maybe you don't want to lease it for 4 years. Maybe you only want to lease it for 2 years. So you have to just consider what your options are, because if you lease the car for 2 years, then your loan for this probably won't be as long. But if you lease for 4 years, you're still going to have payments to do for the car, even though, yes, it is less what you're paying. So when it comes to finance, everybody's choices are going to differ because everybody's financial situation differs. And you always, like I said, have to choose what's going to be the best option for you. All right, so that ends our very first section on finance. And next time, we're going to talk about simple and compound interest.